Hello and welcome to the Happiness Festival, hosted by the Happiness Institute in association with Gowing Life. We are joined today by Jacqueline Lindsay. Jacqueline is the co-founder and CEO of kindness.org. She's taken her passion for people and love of leading and problem solving to help launch kindness.org, which leverages science, technology, and a global network to bring kindness to the forefront of society. Jacqueline has spent over a decade in the nonprofit space, where she's helped raise more than $100 million for domestic and international missions. She sits on the board of Children in Conflict and is an advisor to Creative Mint and Expectful. Thank you so much for joining us, Jacqueline, and we look forward to your talk.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be with you today. And wherever you are in the world, I hope that this is something that resonates with you, which is looking at what is the link between kindness and happiness and how can we bring more of it into the world. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of an organization called kindness.org. And as you heard in the intro, what we're trying to do is figure out how to leverage science to bring more kindness into the world. And when we began this work, it was really rooted in the idea that kindness mattered, but we didn't know what the data said. We wanted to understand if we could root ourselves in the foundation of evidence. So prior to even launching in 2016, the very first thing we did was set out to understand if there was a link between kind action and our happiness and well-being. And the reason we started there is if we could somehow show the benefits that kindness had on the individual self, we felt like that would really lay the groundwork for people to trust the idea of it and see it as something more credible and less fluffy. So we put out an RFP and had some amazing applicants from around the world try to come in and join us in investigating this idea, this question. And we ended up having the opportunity to work with Oxford University on studying this. And you'll soon be hearing from my colleague, who's now our KindLab director and research director over everything we're doing in the scientific side of kindness. But at that time, he was working with Oxford, and he came in to investigate this question for us. So what emerged was a meta-analysis. And again, you'll hear more from him on the details and the deep dive of what that study showed us. But ultimately, at a high level, yes, our kind actions have a significant effect on our happiness and well-being. And furthermore, a kind act is actually one of the most effective ways to affect the happiness of you and someone else simultaneously. We say it's a 2-for-1, basically. So that really helped harness us in this idea that we wanted to focus on helping people choose kindness. So we set out with a mission to both educate and inspire people to choose kindness. The education is where we focus on the scientific side, and the inspiration is where we focus on things like content, storytelling, and showcasing the human side of kindness. All of it comes down to the fact, though, that it is up to each of you. It's up to every individual to choose or to not choose kindness. And so our hope is by this work, we can get as many people choosing kindness as often as possible. Before I go into what that looks like, let me talk a little bit about what do I mean when I say kindness. Everyone has their own interpretation. If all of you were to sit right now and reflect on what kindness means to you, we most likely have such varied answers. In fact, that was a lot of the work we did when we were beginning, was trying to understand how kindness was understood across cultures, across locations, and we came up with so many different answers. But one thing was clear is that it was something that everybody understood. So we really wanted to come up with something that was easy for people to understand when we talk about it. So we say the ABCs of kindness, which is an action intended to benefit someone, typically accompanied with an emotional component. And then from there, we started to think about what are the words that are associated with kindness. So when we think about it, we wanted to try and qualify it. And so here's a slide that really helps you understand what are the things that kindness is nested over. We see kindness as a meta value, and in our minds, that looks like all of these things housed under the idea of what kindness is. And it can involve all sorts of things. While it's an action can take so many different forms. And so this is really intended to help give some guardrails over what and how we experience kindness and what we do to bring more of it into the world. Once we did that, we continued to investigate existing research and literature on the topic. All of this was to really continue to affirm why it matters and how we can ensure what we put out is trustworthy and credible. And the benefits are amazing. I'm sure you're going to be hearing so many different people talk about how happiness and science and all of that is linked together. There's a lot of overlap with the role it has and the impact it has when it comes to kindness. So kindness is good for our mental health. These are some of our favorite facts that we found during our investigations on existing literature. Kindness is contagious, so it is something that not only are you benefiting from, but if there's a witness or someone experiencing it, that can have a ripple effect, which is such a powerful and potent tool to think about. And it makes you happy. And as I said, the first thing we highlight here is we did a meta-analysis, but there's been many pieces of research that have validated how kindness affects our happiness. And so all of that for us reminds us that every kind act matters. And much of what we do is try to figure out how to amplify those kind of actions that we're taking. So the way we look at our work and how we approach it, and what I'm going to share the last few minutes with you are two different ways that we're doing this, is we always lead with research. What does the data tell us? What does the science tell us? If there's a gap in that, can we solve that gap? And then how do we test those findings in the real world? Because there's a lot that can emerge from a laboratory setting. But if you're not then figuring out how to put it in the hands of people to really use it and apply it, it might not work, right? It might not actually translate. And so we take it all to the real world, and we do that through content and action-based programming. And the ultimate goal is that we're scaling kindness. And it's been quite a journey figuring out exactly what that looks like. So I'm going to share two things with you. One is a piece of content, and one is an applied program that we're developing. And the piece of content was rooted in the idea of expressing gratitude and trying to showcase what can happen when you acknowledge the kindness that someone's given you. This video was something we produced with our friends in London, and within an hour it went viral. And for us, what we tried to do was focus on how do we drive action in the moment. So we're constantly consuming content, but how do we get people to go one step further and take an action? So I'm going to play this video for you. And as you can see, it's had amazing engagement. But the thing that was most exciting were there were 200,000 acts of kindness associated with this video when we released it.
This is a message to my sister Shalisha. When I gave birth to my beautiful daughter, Lyra, I was terrified. All the mornings when you used to come to my house and you'd bath her, you'd help me do everything. I could never thank you enough for loving me when I forgot to love me.
I really appreciate all the little things you've been doing for me. Every day for 46 years, you bought me a cup of tea in bed.
This is a message for my mum. My children are on the autistic spectrum. I've gone through a lot of struggles in the last year and a half to get Joseph into a special needs school. You was the one that stepped in and booked us all on a family break.
I would really like to thank my school friend Josh. His friendship and his kindness means the world to me. When some people are mean to me because I'm different, Josh is always nice to me and always looks out for me.
My name is Marcus Perno Daly, and I'm short, dark and handsome. I was paralysed from the top chest down. I know that you decided to put your life on hold. I couldn't answer anything more.
In October, I had started hormones because I'm transgender, and a month later I met Tallulah. It's been pretty tough, and it's probably been super tough for you, but you've been amazing.
You and your family were willing to eat whatever I baked, and that really helped and encouraged me to know that I could do it. And now I work at a lovely bakery which is behind me.
You got me out of the house, you organised the girly night.
You know, I needed someone and you was there, and that meant so much to me, bro.
And baby girl, when you see this, hopefully you realise how much I really do appreciate you and love you for the person who you really are.
I'd like to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to the earth.
Thank you so much, Mum. You mean the world to me. Sorry.
movie, wherever you are, that inspired you. And I'd encourage you right now to think about who is someone you could say thank you to, and send them a quick text and let them know why you appreciate them or something they've done that you're really grateful for. In closing, I'm going to share a really exciting new initiative where we're trying to figure out how do we have a significant impact immediately. What does that really look like? There were so many ways that we could take this work as we begin to develop the programs and kind of the applied side of all of our learnings and all of our research. We knew we were really excited to expand into the education space, and when we had the opportunity to partner with NIVEA to do so, we immediately began investigating where we could have an impact with children. So I'm really proud to talk about LearnKind, which is our new evidence-based curriculum that we're rolling out to classrooms this fall. The idea for us was trying to figure out how do we take the underpinnings of science and make science something that's exciting and leverage scientific inquiry and turn it into a program for children. So following an inquiry-based learning framework model, we are trying to show kids that kindness is something you can actually study. And what we're going to do is help turn students into scientists. And we're going to set them out with answering a question, which is, what are the kind acts that make you happiest? And the idea, again, is going back to self. And if we can encourage children to see the benefits of kindness and to investigate it for themselves in a way where it's not prescriptive, which is so often what happens. Kindness is given to children in a bottle in a way that's packaged up saying you ought to do this, you should be doing this. And we want to reframe that. We want to instead say, this is what the data shows us. This is what the science is saying. But what do you think? What do you experience? How does it affect you? So we're setting out on that journey this fall, and more to come. Watch the space. Follow us on social. We reply to every message. We would love to hear from you and happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much and wish you all a happy and kind day.
Thank you, Jacqueline. That was excellent, interesting, and very impactful as well. That was great to see and to listen to. Thank you so much. We do actually have a few questions for you.
Great.
If you would have unlimited funds and resources, what area of research would you want to drive forward the most and why?
Well, we're trying to do that actually, which is developing the world's first database of kind acts and putting in place an index measurement tool to help us figure out how to really scale kindness. So I would take any money to put that out into the world. Okay, that's actually a good segue to the next question. What is kindness.org's next 5-year mission, and how will the world be kinder going forward? I would love to see LearnKind in classrooms around the world. We're currently concentrating largely domestically in the United States, though we're certainly working with schools internationally as well. But in 5 years, the dream would be that we're everywhere in a classroom, helping to build and empower children to choose kindness. And I'd love us to expand our work into workplace, really meeting people, whatever their age, where they spend the most time. So may that be a child in a classroom or an adult in a workplace setting, having the programs and tools there to ensure that any environment we're in is a kind one.
Actually, very pertinent point, because I wanted to ask, actually, yeah. So people spend the majority of their time at work in normal circumstances, of course. So what methods and strategies would you recommend applying there in terms of kindness?
So we've actually done a study on this where we brought in the idea that if we could just get employees to do more kind actions towards each other, that had the potential to improve engagement, employee well-being, overall life satisfaction. We built this off of a study that had been done at Coca-Cola in Spain, adapted it based on what we were interested in learning, and rolled it out to several hundred employees at a university in New York. And it was a pilot, but the learnings were phenomenal. And while it was a correlational study, not a causal study, at the end of 7 weeks of strictly implementing more action-based approaches to employee care and how we treat one another, every single thing that we measured increased. So that was employee engagement, employee well-being, and life satisfaction. So we really believe in harnessing the power of our choices and the actions we're taking. And much of what we would want to do in a workplace setting is equip people with how they can choose kindness more often for their colleagues.
Yeah, I think, it's a great point. I feel like a lot of companies could actually implement your strategies. Absolutely. But so interesting. So what do you think are the biggest obstacles for people to start being more kind towards each other?
I think it's a few things. I think that understandably kindness is still met with a level of skepticism. It's seen as something that can be perceived as fluffy, it's nebulous. What does it mean? You know, again, a lot of these questions we've set out to try and answer and help provide language and that nomenclature for people so we can get over some of those immediate barriers. I think a lot of times there can be fear, you know, what if it goes wrong? What if it doesn't, you know, benefit me the way that I was hoping? Or what if it's not received the way that I was intending? Sometimes lack of information. You know, much of what we're seeing even in the current climate we're in right now in our world is people want to help. The intention is there, the desire is there, but when you don't know what to do or how to best do it, you feel perhaps like a paralysis, so you end up not doing it. And I think all of those are barriers that are able to be overcome, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and so that's a good point, because I wanted to ask, you've written about being kind in a crisis. Can you give the audience a few examples of what that entails? I saw making masks for others was a good one, I thought, and writing a letter to someone who has made a difference to your life, also great. But yeah, if you can share a few things around that as well and give us a few examples.
Yeah, certainly. I think the idea of how to be kind in a crisis for us emerged when there were so many lists that we were seeing when things around this pandemic were really taking off that were guiding people on what to do. And you can see some of our research on our website around this, but part of even how we're reframing how people think about kindness is instead of saying a random act of kindness, we are starting to use the language, a recommended act of kindness, with the idea being through the database I mentioned earlier, that we can really start to understand the cost and benefit of our actions. I think all of that will really help empower people to feel more confident in their choices and to understand the effectiveness of it, of the choices we're making. And so what we set out to study around how to be kind in a crisis is what are some of the most beneficial acts of kindness that we can be doing in the middle of this pandemic. So we're housing them on our site right now. You can go to acts.kindness.org and you can see all of the ones that you can engage with. We ask you some questions around your happiness and well-being and what happens when you try them. But it's things like donating blood. These real needs that are sacrificial but can have such an incredible impact. So that's one that I highly encourage in this time, especially. Really connecting with people. So it's been understandably a very stressful time for people, from loss, may it be loss of life and loved ones through this illness and through COVID-19. May it be loss of jobs because of what's happening to, the economy and the implications that this has had there. And then the containment of being in a home either by yourself, which can, of course, increase loneliness, or with your children and family and all the stress that can come with being quarantined. And so I think pausing to take time to think about who you can connect to that brings you joy or happiness, or someone you haven't connected to in a very long time. Also reaching out to elders. who have an increased likelihood of feeling loneliness and isolation, even more so, like even, very exponentially right now. So is there someone in your life who could benefit from a phone call and a check-in and sending a meal to someone, and supporting small businesses? Those are some of my recommendations of how you can choose kindness during this time.
Thank you. And we had a brief chat before we started. But so can you tell the audience a sort of summary link between serotonin and kindness?
Oh, sure. Your serotonin is positive, goes up when you're kind, and that's the link again to happiness. To me, it's all synergetic to one another. That's the one-liner.
Yeah, so it actually makes people feel good. So everyone should actually try it and try to do it more often. And it's been proven, and it's rooted in science. So everyone listening and seeing this, please do try to sort of practice it more in your daily lives. So the last question here. So what does happiness mean to you?
I will say I equate happiness to a sense of joy, but joy, happiness, whatever words I'm applying, it for me is both a feeling and a state of being. And it's one of the greatest of both. It's one of the best when I can feel joy and happiness and joyful and happy in my day-to-day. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Good. I think that concludes all of the questions as well. I think we've rounded everything off quite well. So I think that was it. But that was really good, Jacqueline, I thought.
Thank you.
And your work, as I mentioned earlier, it is really powerful, actually. I mean, even the clip that you played, that's really powerful as well. And it's interesting how small acts of kindness are something that is actually quite sort of fundamental in life in terms of just communicating with each other or thanking someone for something can be so impactful and moving.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's so much. Normally my keynotes are so much longer, and there's so much that obviously I didn't hit on. But when I talk about every kind act mattering, there's like a whole little thing that I'll say about it's not the heroic acts that we're really looking for. It is those small micro behaviors. It's the very small choices that we're making where we don't even realize the effect and impact they can have. And that's, it's so powerful. So I really love that you've identified that, because I think one of the things that can be misconstrued is kindness has to be something really big, but it really doesn't. It can be as simple as smiling at a stranger, which is one of my favorite acts to go out and do. Not during COVID, so that's why I didn't say that one.